three things to remember about a story told in this fashion. The first is that scale doesn't matter. So a cat like this could coexist in a village with a house of this size, and you just make that happen. And our characters have faces that are for you to imagine. And finally, we always start with a song. Bible, Bible, tell your stories, speak to us about God's glory. There's so much we need to know. Tell us how God loves us so. This is a Jesus story from the New Testament, and this one is from the book of John, although it's told in other books of the Bible as well, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. So there's a little variety between the different versions. I'm going to stick to the John version pretty closely. This takes place toward the end of his ministry. He's very close to Passover. He's very close to Good Friday. And he's probably before Palm Sunday. Anyway, we're getting very close to the end of his life. But he has saved the life of his friend Lazarus. He has raised Lazarus from the dead. And tonight, the family of Lazarus has prepared a wonderful dinner, sort of to tell him thank you, sort of to celebrate how wonderful it is that Lazarus is back and that all the miracles have happened. It's a feast celebrating life at its very, very best. And they want to thank Jesus. They just want to tell him how great he is. So they've invited him over to dinner, and it's a very wonderful feast. You'll have to imagine. The room is probably a little dark, but lots of food, flowers, oil lamps lighting up corners of the room. How pretty would that be? Meats, wines, breads, fruit, wonderful things. All prepared by Mary and Martha. Mary of Bethany, she's known as. Comes from this village, and Lazarus is there. His father is there. Some of the other disciples are there. They've gathered. But it really is to celebrate Jesus. Now, in those days, people didn't have tables like we have. The tables were very, very low. So when people went to eat their dinner, they sort of reclined and took food off the table and popped it in their mouths. So these are all reclining eaters. But they're enjoying their meal, and they're certainly comfortable. Mary and Martha have got the feast. It's ready to go. Mary has been listening very intently to everything that Jesus says. And in truth, Martha's done most of the work. But Mary is enchanted by how very wonderful this Jesus is. Jesus has given some hints that perhaps he's going to die young, and perhaps he's going to die soon. None of the prophets live long, long lives. At one point, Mary disappears from the room. And when she comes back, she has in her hands a jar of alabaster. Now, alabaster is white, but it's kind of like this. It's a beautiful stone that can be shaped into cups and pots. This is a jar. Probably doesn't have a spout. Alabaster holds this ointment, which is very, very precious. It's called spikenard. In those days, women were not actually allowed to have money of their own. So a way for a girl to sort of cadge or have a small amount of money of her own was to invest in very expensive ointments or very expensive perfumes. And she could keep those, and of course, if she had to, she could sell them. That's not what's going to happen tonight. Tonight, Mary takes this very, very expensive ointment to where Jesus is. and she breaks open that pot, and she pours the very precious oil on his feet. And then she washes his feet with the oil and her hair. In some versions, we have tears mixed in here too, with the oil and the hair on his feet. One of the other disciples is there, Judas is there, and Judas says, "Woman, what are you doing wasting that expensive oil like that? You could feed the poor with it." Jesus comes to her aid and says, the poor will always be with us. But this is special. Let her do this. I won't always be with you. And perhaps she'll use the remainder at my burial. That's the whole story. What is our takeaway? It's a very touching story as she kneels at his feet, washes his feet with the precious oil. The smell of it would have filled the room with lovely aroma, lovely, lovely scent, and perhaps the mix of her tears. Maybe Mary understood better than anybody that he really was going to die. Maybe she was the first to sorrow for that moment. Maybe she was just so enthusiastic about this moment of celebrating life and celebrating Jesus. It's like when you really like somebody, you really respect them, you really revere them, and you have one cookie left. And you don't break the cookie in half and each take half. You say, "Here, take the whole cookie because you're so special. You deserve the whole cookie." And when Jesus saves her, I think he's saying, it's a celebration. Tonight, let's just live and bathe in how wonderful life is. Let's just take this moment and let the love fill it. Bible, Bible, tell your story, speak to us about God's glory. There's so much we need to know. Tell us